You're working more than ever. Not just longer hours, but more intensely, more focused, more available, more mentally exhausted. You answer emails faster, you juggle more tasks, you adapt to new tools, new rules, new expectations that didn't exist a few years ago. And you're told this is progress, this is growth, this is what success looks like now. But here's the part no one wants to say out loud. You're working more and owning less. Less control over your time, less security in your life, less confidence in the future. And if you feel that gap growing, you're not imagining it. You were promised a simple trade. Put in the effort, and over time, your life gets better. Not perfect, but more stable, more predictable, more secure. You were told that hard work compounds, that consistency pays off, that sacrifice now leads to comfort later. For a long time, that promise felt real. People worked one job and bought a home. They raised families on a single income. They expected that if they showed up and did what was asked, life would slowly move forward. Not overnight wealth, just stability, ownership, a sense that the ground beneath them was solid. That expectation didn't disappear because people became lazy or entitled. It disappeared because the system changed, quietly, gradually, without an announcement. Today, people work more hours than previous generations. They're more educated, more productive, more efficient. Technology didn't reduce workloads, it intensified them. You're expected to respond faster, learn constantly, stay flexible, stay relevant, stay competitive. You're always reachable, always on, always one update away from being behind. And yet, despite all of that effort, the rewards feel smaller. Home ownership feels distant or impossible. Rent eats a larger share of income every year. Healthcare costs turn minor problems into financial threats. Education feels less like opportunity and more like a lifelong bill. Savings don't feel like security. They feel fragile. So people work more. They take overtime. They pick up side gigs. They freelance at night. They monetize hobbies, not to build wealth, but to survive. That's the shift most people feel but struggle to explain. Work no longer feels like a path forward. It feels like a treadmill. You're moving constantly, but you're not getting anywhere. And that does something to your mind. Because effort without progress creates a unique kind of exhaustion. Not physical tiredness, existential fatigue. The feeling that no matter how much you give, it's never enough. That the finish line keeps moving. That stability is something you chase, not something you reach. Ownership is the missing piece in all of this. Ownership isn't just about property or assets. It's about power. When you own something, you gain leverage. You gain options. You can say no. You can take risks. You can breathe. When you don't own, everything becomes conditional. Your housing depends on decisions you don't control. Your healthcare depends on employment. Your time belongs to schedules set by someone else. Your future feels rented, not built. And the more effort you put in without gaining ownership, the more trapped you feel. This is why so many people say, I'm doing everything right, but it still feels like I'm falling behind. They are, not because they're failing, but because the structure rewards ownership far more than it rewards labor. If you own assets, rising costs often work in your favor. Inflation inflates asset values. Debt becomes easier to manage. Market shifts create opportunity. If you don't own assets, those same forces become pressure. Every increase hits your daily life immediately. Rent goes up. Insurance goes up. Food costs more. Utilities cost more. And wages rarely keep pace. So the solution offered to you is always the same. Work more. That advice sounds reasonable on the surface, but it hides a deeper truth. When the only way to cope with rising costs is to increase effort, effort stops being empowering. It becomes compulsory. You're not working towards something anymore. You're working to avoid disaster. That changes how life feels. It turns rest into guilt, time into something you have to justify, and burnout into a personal failure instead of a structural outcome. This is also why people today feel a different kind of stress than previous generations. It's not just about money, it's about fragility. The sense that one mistake, one illness, one missed paycheck could unravel everything. That fear keeps people compliant. It keeps them overworking. It keeps them saying yes when they should say no, because ownership gives you a buffer, and most people no longer have one. What makes this especially disorienting is that the system still talks as if the old deal exists. You're told to be patient, to trust the process, to keep grinding, to invest in yourself, to stay positive. But the returns no longer match the effort. And when effort and reward disconnect, people internalize the failure. They assume they chose wrong, worked wrong, planned wrong, missed something everyone else figured out. They didn't. They're responding rationally to a system that increasingly extracts value from labor while concentrating ownership at the top. That's not ideology. That's observable reality. And it explains why working more today often results in owning less tomorrow. To understand why this feels so widespread now, you have to look beyond individual choices and zoom out to the structure people are living inside. For most of modern history, work and ownership were connected by an informal promise. You worked, you earned, and over time, you accumulated something that belonged to you. Not instantly, not effortlessly, but gradually. That accumulation created stability. It created a sense that life was moving forward in a measurable way. That link has weakened, not suddenly, not dramatically, but steadily enough that an entire generation feels the strain without always seeing the cause. Wages did not collapse. They stagnated. Costs did not explode overnight. They crept upward year after year. Productivity didn't slow down. It accelerated. The gap wasn't obvious at first. It revealed itself slowly through stress, delays, compromises, and a growing sense that effort was no longer translating into security. This is why people today often feel busy but not accomplished, exhausted but not fulfilled, constantly occupied but strangely stuck. Work expanded into every corner of life. Technology made it possible to work anywhere, anytime. What was sold as flexibility became availability. What was framed as freedom became expectation. You are reachable. You are trackable. You are measurable. And because you are measurable, you are replaceable. That quiet awareness sits beneath a lot of modern anxiety. The sense that no matter how hard you work, you are never quite safe. There is always another person willing to do more, faster, cheaper. Always another update, another platform, another shift in demand. Ownership used to counterbalance that insecurity. It gave people a foundation, a place to stand, a buffer against volatility. Without it, work feels exposed. This is why people cling so tightly to their jobs now, even when those jobs drain them. Why they tolerate conditions they know are unhealthy. Why they stay in roles that no longer make sense. Because losing income doesn't just mean discomfort, it means losing access to healthcare, housing, stability. The system doesn't have to threaten people explicitly. The structure does it automatically. And over time, that pressure reshapes behavior. People stop taking risks. They stop changing careers. They stop questioning terms. They stop imagining alternatives. Not because they lack ambition, but because the cost of missteps has become too high. This is also where the psychological weight of owning less really lands. When you don't own much, your future feels conditional. Every plan depends on external approval, on interest rates, on rent renewals, on job markets, on policies you don't control. You start making decisions defensively instead of creatively. Life narrows. You choose safety over fulfillment, predictability over growth, short-term survival over long-term possibility. And then you're told that this is maturity, that this is responsibility, that this is just how adulthood works now. But something important gets lost in that framing. Previous generations didn't accept constant insecurity as normal. They expected effort to produce a baseline level of stability, not luxury, stability. The confidence that if they kept showing up, they could eventually relax a little, breathe a little. own a little more of their time and their future. Today, many people never reach that point. They work harder each year and feel less settled. They earn more on paper, but feel poorer in practice. They accumulate credentials, experience, and responsibilities, but not control. That mismatch creates quiet resentment. Not loud anger, not rebellion, just a low-grade frustration that hums in the background of daily life. The sense that the math doesn't add up, that something fundamental is off. And when people try to talk about it, they're often met with platitudes. Work harder, upskill, network, invest earlier, be grateful, stay positive. Those responses miss the point. This isn't about motivation, it's about structure. A system can demand infinite effort if it doesn't return ownership. It can extract energy, time, and attention indefinitely as long as people believe the next milestone will finally bring relief. But when relief never comes, people burn out. Not all at once, quietly, gradually, through cynicism, through disengagement, through the feeling that no matter what they do, the outcome is already decided. That's why phrases like working more for less resonate so deeply. They capture an experience people struggle to articulate, the feeling that the exchange rate between effort and reward has changed and not in their favor. Understanding this doesn't instantly fix the problem, but it does something important. It reframes the narrative. It shifts the question from, why can't I get ahead? To why does getting ahead require so much more now? That shift matters because it replaces self-blame with clarity. And clarity is stabilizing. When people realize they're not alone, not broken, not uniquely failing, the emotional weight lifts slightly. They stop internalizing systemic pressure as personal inadequacy. They begin to see patterns instead of isolated struggles. That awareness doesn't remove the pressure, but it changes how people carry it. They become more intentional, more selective, more skeptical of narratives that demand endless sacrifice without offering security. They start asking better questions about what kind of life is actually being built and who it's built for. This is where the conversation often gets uncomfortable, because once you acknowledge that working more doesn't guarantee ownership anymore, you have to confront a harder truth. The system is no longer designed to convert effort into independence for most people. It's designed to convert effort into output. And output alone doesn't build freedom. Freedom comes from leverage, from buffers, from ownership, from having enough margin to make choices without fear. When those things are out of reach, work becomes a loop instead of a ladder. People sense this intuitively. That's why so many feel disillusioned even when they're successful by traditional metrics. The job is there. The income is there, but the future still feels uncertain, still feels rented, and that uncertainty seeps into everything: relationships, health, identity, self-worth. Because when life feels precarious, it's hard to relax, hard to plan, hard to imagine a future that isn't fragile. If you feel that tension, the sense that you're giving more and getting less in return, it's not because you failed to keep up. It's because the terms of the exchange changed, and you're still being judged by the old rules. Recognizing that is not an excuse. It's context. It allows you to stop measuring yourself against expectations that no longer match reality. It gives you permission to question narratives that demand endless effort without delivering stability. And it opens space for a different kind of conversation, one that isn't about working harder, but about why work alone is no longer enough. If this video reflects how your life feels right now, say so. Not because complaining fixes anything, but because shared recognition matters. It reminds people they're not isolated in this experience. Leave a comment. Share what working more and owning less looks like in your life. Because when enough people see the pattern clearly, it becomes harder to dismiss. And clarity, even before solutions, is the first form of power.